Hello everyone. In this session, we will learn about JavaScript. So before I start on JavaScript, to write code in JavaScript, you need an IDE. I would suggest either WebStorm or Visual Studio Code. You can just search Visual Studio Code and download it from Google. Okay, once you have it, install it, and once you install it, you will see a editor just like this. This is Visual Studio Code. In this session, we will gonna follow Visual Studio Code, but the syntax and the coding is remain same. So you can use any other ID, even text IDs like Sublime or Notepad. Now, once you have Visual Studio, for the first time user, what you need to do, you have to install extension. So when you open this extension bar, you will see certain kind of extension, and I would suggest just search JavaScript, and you will see this kind of install option, and click on Babel JavaScript install button and install it. These two things are installed. Just click on file and create a new file. Okay, and then just save this file as a JavaScript file. Just click and select Babel JavaScript and name it as like session 1.js. Okay, once that is done, you'll see this editor. Now start writing your code. So first of all, let's talk about variables. So in JavaScript, mainly there are three kind of variables. One is called global variables, which is declared like this. Variable var is a keyword for declaring variables. So I can say var a is equal to Chandan, or I can say let's talk with numbers first, right? Similarly, if you have to define a string, you can do that where b is equal to Chandan. Okay, so JavaScript is a dynamically typed language, so you don't need to define a data type like you do in Java. Sorry, oh yeah, Java, int or string. So whatever you define, whatever value you supply for the variable, that would be printed as like this. Now this is for normal variables, which is a global variables. The second thing is constant. So you can define constant as like this. Okay, and the constant is basically the value which doesn't change. So this is kind of a replacement for final static in Java, if you know Java. Otherwise, so if you like to declare variables which should be used throughout the this class, so also this file, so that you can declare as a variable var. Otherwise, if you need a variable which should not change anywhere, then you can declare it as a const. And then the third type is let. So this is kind of a local variable which remains inside only a method or a block code. So let's say, so I'll give you an example of if else also. So let's say if I say if a is equal to 1, then so to print it in JavaScript, there are two commands, either write document.write or console.log. Because we will be using JavaScript and Postman, I would be using console.log, and I would suggest you will also use console.log to print anything. Right, console.log a. And if I say I declare a variable which is a local kind of a variable, So I can do that, but these local variables, which is defined using let keyword, are not accessible outside the code block. So if I try to print console.log a here, and similarly if I try to print console.log local here, so if I run this program, you can run it by going into run and run without debugging. So see, it will throw error that local is not defined because local is not available here. So if you see, this error is basically is present in this line, 13 line. So we can't access local variables outside the code block or methods. So this is a third kind of variable, right? So this is about variables. Now let's talk about logics. So in logic, we have already seen if. So if I try to print this now, it should work, right? So I printed console.log a, so a is printed, then I printed console.log local, so I'm local is printed, and similarly again b is printed with Chandan. So with logic, if else is simple, this is if, and if you want to have else, you can have else. So now I will say if a is equal to 2, then print this, otherwise print console.log. I'll print final value this time. So if I run this, okay, this time only 3.14 is printed because the if condition was wrong. Now I can also say if I can also apply or an and logic here. So for that, and we use double ampersand, and I can say a is equal to this and b is equal to Chandan, then print this. So it went to the this code block again because both are true. Now if I say let's a is equal to 2 and this, so it will not go in this block and print the outside block, else block, right? Now if I replace with this or is written through this operator, so now it should run the first if part, right? So this is how you use if else with and or logic. Now let's talk about for loop. So for loop, I can use similar concept for, then let I, then I less than, let's say 2, and I plus plus, and then I can print I here. And if you see, it will run it and print the values of I. Because I did not initialize I, so that's why it was not printed. So let's initialize it and now run it again, right? So it printed 0 and 1 till the time I was less than 2. So that's how you can use for loop. Similarly, for each loop, I will give you an example of for each while we'll discuss about list. Now the next logic is while loop, right? So I will declare a variable, let's say variable counter. I'll say save it as 0. Now I will say I will also declare a variable while count is equal to 10 or not 5, and in while loop I would say while count is less than, sorry, greater than 0, what should you do? You should print this value and reduce the counter, reduce the while count. Yeah, I think counter is not needed, so just remove this. Right, so I should see the values of while count starting from 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So let's run it. Right, so 0, 1 was for the for loop example, then 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So that's how you can use while loop. Now let's talk about array or list. So to create an array or list, you can use again where, let's say list, and I can say name 1, name 2, name 3, right? You can declare a list like this. You can also declare an empty list without any variable values. Now let's print it. So for that we will use for each. So I would say for each, not this for each, there is a for I would say for each item. So I'll say LETI in list. What you will do, you will print the list item console.log. So to print the list item is basically list followed by index. So in our case, the index would be I. So we should see the list items this time. What happened? Did we make some mistake? For which let I in list console.list. Oh, we made a mistake here. Right, so let's run it. Okay, so that's how you can iterate through values in list. Now you may need to add or remove values from list. So for that we have two functions. So to add something, you have a function called list.push. So I will add name 4. Similarly, to remove something, you have a function list.pop. So it will remove the latest entry from the list. So now if I print this again after adding or and removing the items, see, so what happened, first of all the list was created with name 1, name 2, name 3, then list pushed, so name 4 was inserted, but then because of pop the name 4 was removed. That's why you only see name 1, 2, 3. Right, so if I let's say debug it, so debug it, just click debug, and now this time run as start debugging. Run with debug did not work. Okay, so again I will add a So I added a breakpoint. Now I'll try again, right? So now in this scenario, you can see right now the list has name 1, name 2, name 3, name 4, right? So what happens after this step? You see this list dot pop. After this step, the list so I would say step over. Now if you see the list, so list item 4, latest item was removed. So now if I execute the whole values, you can see name 1, 2, 3. So let's say now let's talk about some string methods. So let's say I have two string where s1 first, where s2 second. Now if I want to perform certain action on string, so we have include, so it checks that the value is present or not in the string. We have index of to find out the first occurrence of particular string value. These are not that important. Let's talk about include first, because we may need to use include when we want to test like contains. So it is very useful. So I would say if s1 contains, or in this case includes, s2, then print console.log true, right? So it is basically used to check contains operator. Similarly, to check equals, you can use equals operator. So this time true will not be pushed printed. Now let's see some other methods. So on the replace is basically to replace string. We could use that. Starts with to check that the particular string is starting with something. Substring, basically extracting some substring from particular string. So I could say 0, 5, and I could store it or console.log it. Right, so first printed, so you can use string like that. The methods, trim is clear to string and upper string is simple. Yeah, these are the main methods for string. Now let's talk about functions or methods, which we'll be using more in Postman. So to declare a function, you have to use a function tag, and then let's say if you have to do the sum of two numbers, so you can create a function like this. And here you have to supply parameters, and then in return you can say return a plus b. So this is basically method declaration and method definition. Now let's see how do we call this method. So calling is easy. I can say console.log sum with, let's say, 4, 5. So it should print 9. So let's see. Right, so that's how you can declare functions and then call them. Now, in Postman, you would see the function would not be declared like this, and maybe they use arrow functionality. So arrow functionality is basically helps you to write less and do more. So what you can rather than doing that, what you can do is where total, and I can say if there is a comma b, then what you will do, just do it a plus b. So here you are not needed any function tag or a return tag. You can create a method like this also, method definition like this also. So whenever if I try to call total with parameter a and b, it would give me a plus b. So let's try to console.log total this time, and this time I would say 10 comma 12. See, so the same function, same result, but less code. So in a single line, I've did everything rather than using 3-4 lines. So you will see that in Postman also. So this is about functions. Now the last thing or the main thing is basically JSON class or JSON object. So we'll be playing playing with lot of JSON string and JSON objects. So we should know how to convert a JSON string to a JSON object, and vice versa, a JSON object to JSON string. So let's say this is our JSON string. I'm creating a simple JSON. Let's say name is equal to something and phone number is equal to something. So name is equal to Chandan, comma, phone is equal to 98745632110. Right? So I declared a JSON string. Now, if I have to convert this JSON string to a JSON object, I can do like where JSON object is equal to JSON class. So this is a JSON interface which provides all those methods. We are having two important methods, parse and stringify. Parse is basically converting a JSON string to JSON object, and stringify is basically converting a JSON object to JSON string. So if I do JSON.parse JSON string, right? So now I can access any value using this object. So I can simply say JSON.log JSON obj dot, if I have to extract name, I can do that like this, right? Why I did that, I will talk about. So this is JSON path. So I'll talk about this. Let's run this first. So I'm able to see name Chandan. Now let's understand JSON path. So JSON path. So just type JSON path finder on Google and you will notice this website. So if you see a sample, right? So JSON path is basically finding the JSON, the value of particular field. So if I have to find out the value of this Persian, I have to extract this Persian value. So my JSON path would be parent, child, and then the value. So JSON path would be Indonesian, European, Indo-Iranian, Iranian, 0. So this is kind of a 0. So that's how you get the values using JSON path. So you can use this website if you don't know it. Otherwise, you can also create your own. So in this case, X is JSON object. If you want to create your own, so if the JSON is simple, you can find out like what is the JSON path. So in our case, or otherwise, if the JSON is complex, you can use this website. So in our case, so Sorry, maybe I was not using or showing my other screen. So what I can do is basically I can tell you. So JSON path is basically if your JSON is this and you have to extract this name value, Chandan value. So your JSON path would be JSON object dot name, right? Similarly, if there are multiple child JSONs are involved, let's say names and name one, name two, name three, and also let's say give you an example. Employee data is a parent JSON. Under that there are multiple fields: name, phone number, email, etc. So if I have to extract the email, so my JSON path would be name, oh sorry, employee data dot email or employee data dot name. So that's how you can extract this value, or otherwise you can go to this website, JSON path extractor. This is a website, and just paste the JSON there and extract the data from JSON path from that website. So to comment we use // or to block comment we use this. So now you know about JSON path. So similarly I can extract the JSON path or the other field as well using phone. So now if I try to print it, you should see that the values are extracted. Now this is fine when there is this, small JSON, but let's say you have to print out all the key and values of this JSON just like we do in other programming languages. So to extract every key and every value from a long JSON, what you can do, you can use a for each loop. So I can say for each loop, let key in JSON object. So in our case, JSON object, give me the value. So I can say console.log value of key is key. Similarly, I can say value of value is JSON object key. That's how you can get a value, all the values from the JSON fields using key value formats. And then you can also apply some logic like if key is this, then extract the value and so on. So let's run it. Right, so we got that the value of name is, wait a second, yeah, so value of key is name, the value is Chandan, and the value of key is phone, then value is this. So you got every key and every value by using this, right? So this is about it about basics of JavaScript. See you in the next session.